Tuesday surely was a day of high tension in Benin. In Porto Novo, the capital and seat of parliament, is to host this Thursday the ceremony of establishment of the new National Assembly resulting from the legislative elections of April 28. Mass demonstration this Wednesday in Guinea-Bissau. Proponents of the parliamentary majority called for the appointment of a government 6 months before the proposed date for the presidential election in the country. In Sudan, discussions on the political transition have been suspended. The crisis seems not to be over yet. This Wednesday evening, the army withdrew from the talks and everything is back to square one with new tensions in the capital. These are our top stories. Stay tuned for more details in this newscast. The U.S. computer company Microsoft Corporation intends to accompany African young entrepreneurs during a recent audience with Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. The representative of Microsoft presented his project to build a technology center in Africa. The project will develop applications using artificial intelligence, mixed reality, and machine learning, as well as Microsoft Office, Azure, and Windows. Microsoft Core, the technology giant, will invest $100 million to open a technology development center in Africa with sites located in Kenya and Nigeria over the next 5 years. Like many other technology companies, African technology enterprises provide a new market and other assets such as availability of labor. These new centers will employ more than 100 local engineers, and the products will be customized for the African market while taking advantage of the growing economies on the continent. From a monetary point of view, it will be an investment of $100 million between the infrastructure and people. But the most important is not about it. It is rather the ripple effect it will create in the ecosystem with universities, governments, and with startups. Tuesday was a day of high tension in Benin, precisely in Porto Novo, the capital and the seat of parliament, which will host this Thursday the installation ceremony of the new National Assembly after the legislative elections, which took place in April 28th. It is a completely single-party National Assembly. The 83 members of parliament all come from the presidential movement. The leads from the opposition side had all been excluded, but this assembly, which raises tensions, is placed under surveillance with important security measures within the vicinity of the seat of the National Assembly. Pick-up, royal tanks, and paratroopers commandos, a rather impressive apparatus for this day. Considered illegitimate by the opposition that still claims the cancellation of the electoral process since it was sidelined, the 83 elected members of parliament all came from power. The election had recorded the lowest turnout since the advent of democracy in this country, which now has got to 23% and an abstention rate of 73%. Supporters of the parliamentary majority in Guinea-Bissau, including the leader of the main party, demonstrated earlier this week demanding the appointment of a new government by President José Mario Vaz 6 months before the date suggested for the holding of the presidential election. The protesters chanted out loud, "The people have the right to respect for institutions." Among these protesters were Pereira and Nuno Gomes, respectively leader of an allied party to the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, and first vice president of the National Assembly. Nuk Koba, a protester and very unhappy, says he stole the money from the country, the money that Angola and other countries had given us. Let him give it back. Let him give us everything. And another demonstrator, Aissatu Mbola Sana, a teacher, also says, "No government, no law. There is no authority in this country. There is no governance, no discipline. Everyone does what they want." The National Electoral Commission suggested the date of November 3rd for the first round of the presidential election, with a possible second round on December 8th. It is therefore only 6 months to the date suggested for the presidential election to be held that the protesters want a new government. Musa Kamara, president of the organizing committee of the event, says, "We want to tell the president of the republic that he is questioning the expression which the people obtained at the polls. But let the president know that as soon as people express their choice, there's no question to raise any longer concerning freedom or the choice of who should govern or not. Of course, the people must govern." Heads of mission of the United Nations in West Africa meeting in Bissau on May 10th deplore the recurrence of partisan divisions around the election of members of the Bureau of the National Assembly and deemed crucial the rapid appointment of a new Prime Minister by the President of the Republic. It only lasted 3 days while the negotiations between the military council and the civil coalition had resulted in the establishment of a 3-year political transition period with a 300-member parliament, but especially a government composed mainly of civilians. The military council withdrew from the dialogue started last Monday. According to the head of the military council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, in a speech to the nation through the public television, the military therefore decided to suspend the talks for 72 hours to prepare the ground to the conclusion of an agreement on the transition. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan also hoped that during the 72-hour period, there will be a lifting of the barricades in Khartoum to reopen one of the railway lines connecting the capital to the rest of the country that has been closed. According to him, the deterioration of the security situation in Khartoum took the form of verbal escalation against the armed forces, the closing of bridges and streets, a railway line, a total mess in the city, and the infiltration among the demonstrators of armed elements responsible for shooting against the police. The Sudanese capital has since almost shut down and some neighbors are becoming isolated. According to some demonstrators, the military forces seem to save time. And for the second time in 2 days, there has been a shootout on a barricade and at least 8 people got wounded, some of whom have been transported to the hospital in a serious condition. The negotiation process suspended by the army had, however, made significant progress since Monday. The agreement provided for the legislature to consist of 300 members, 67% of whom will be appointed from within the LAC, and the rest of the seat will be reserved for representatives of political forces not affiliated with the civil coalition. At the Regional Episcopal Conference of West Africa, Burkina Faso President Roch Marc Christian Kabore condemned a series of terrorist attacks against Catholics in which 10 people were killed in 2 days. Burkina Faso has suffered from increasingly frequent and deadly attacks under jihadist groups targeting Christians as well as Muslims, which they consider are not radical enough or accused of collaborating with the authorities. The attacks on churches is part of the jihadist strategies, according to experts, while Christians and Muslims live together very well in Burkina Faso. According to Paul Umaruko Walaga, a geopolitical consultant and Sahel specialist, this is just something that fits into the logic of terrorists. The Sahel specialist said they first started with a certain number of symbolic targets, namely the defense forces, which are their first enemies, then the major economic and financial infrastructures like hotels. Now they are targeting army headquarters, teachers, and so on and so forth. All this is something well thought out, and things are only getting worse, he continues. Hundreds of Somali high school students, very angry, got down into the street of Mogadishu on Tuesday following the announcement on Monday by Education Minister Abdullahi Goda to cancel the 6 exams that had already been taken, adding that the entire process would start over at the end of May. One student declares, "We showed up and sat for the exams during the last 3 days, but still the Minister of Education announced that these exams have been cancelled and postponed to May 27th, which we will not accept." The demonstrating students are claiming their results and demanding the departure of the Minister of Education from the government. These protesters demonstrating against the cancellation of exams by the government say on one hand that they have worked hard to prepare these exams, and on the other hand they accuse the government for being irresponsible and for selling the exams through bribery. Without specifying the origins of this leak, the Minister of Education indicated that the documents would have come from one of the 90 exam centers where parents of students purchased them from. About 31,000 high school students are concerned by the cancellation of these exams. Tuesday surely was a day of high tension in Benin. In Porto Novo, the capital and seat of parliament, is to host this Thursday the ceremony of establishment of a new National Assembly resulting from the legislative elections of April 28th. Mass demonstration this Wednesday in Guinea-Bissau. Proponents of the parliamentary majority call for the appointment of a government 6 months before the proposed date for the presidential election in the country. In Sudan, discussions on the political transition have been suspended. The crisis seems not to be over yet. This Wednesday evening, the army withdrew from the talks and everything is back to square one with new tensions in the capital. That's all for our newscast today. Stay tuned on Gabon 24 for more news.